Welcome everybody to another episode of Women of Inspiration Testimonies. My name's Tammy from Lines Arise, and we also have a platform on Facebook called Women of Inspiration that provides support for women and just encourages and blesses, and we acknowledge that we play so many different roles in our everyday life. And I'm so happy to bring another testimony to you. It seems like the beginning of the year is always quiet, and then we sort of gain momentum. From July, it gets really busy. So I've got Helena Willicott with me today, and she's from Cape Town. And she's going to be sharing her story with us today, and it's really cool. I'm excited to share it. She's also authored little books to help children, but we will talk a little bit more about that. So Helena, you're a registered nurse, but you're not currently practicing. Yeah. And you've been on your own healing journey, and I think out of that, these little books were birthed, right?
That's right,
but
yeah.
I'll give over to you so that you can just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then you can start sharing your testimony with us.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So basically, like you said, I'm a registered nurse, and I have 3 kids, 2 biological boys and then 1 adopted daughter. Now, my daughter that I adopted, she is HIV positive, and when I got her and she was 3 months old, I was a single mom. I wasn't married yet. And then obviously when she was 3, I got married, and so we adopted her. And I always wanted to write a book for her, a book about adoption and how she feels as a Black daughter living in a white family. And so because she was also HIV positive and all the stigma around adoption, this was 20 years ago. She's 20 right now. The stigma about adoption, the stigma about HIV. So I always wanted to write her a little book to just explain who she is and how much she means to us. And then because I'm a nurse, and I thought there's so many other stigmas about diseases or conditions that children have, epilepsy, diabetes, all kinds of things that they don't understand necessarily at that age, and also the friends don't understand. And that is something that I really wanted them to know, that your friend who has diabetes can read the book and understand what the child is going through and what is the condition about. So that is where I decided to start writing books about medical conditions for children. And this is, I know there's going to be more books, but I only have 6 right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. So before we show them your little books, tell me a little bit about your own, so not in detail, but what has been your own journey? Because I know that out of our journeys, we birth the things that we do. Like God put stuff in our spirit, and it kind of just comes forward. So I'm sure you've been a little bit on your own journey of healing to get to a place where you've been able to release these books. So what has your experience been?
Yes, absolutely. I haven't been, as you know, women are very busy, and I haven't been able to write these books for 20 years. So it's only been the last year that I've written these 6 books.
So it's been a concept in your spirit for 20 years, and you just haven't.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. For 20 years, this has been birthed 20 years ago, and only now I managed to write these books. And the journey, because I started writing the books, is I was diagnosed with DID through a psychologist. And the DID is a big journey going back in your own childhood and healing from past hurts and things. And during those sessions, when you're busy dealing with your childhood things, a lot of things come up. And one of the healing processes for me was to suggest is to write something, write a diary, write something about yourself and how you feel. And this was rebirthed again in me, is I really want to write a book about adoption. And when I started writing the first book, I just couldn't stop. And I written now 6 and going to write a few more. And it's just absolutely amazing how writing something as simple as a children's book about medical conditions can bring healing in your own life.
That's right. It's almost like you revisiting that part of you, right? That childhood that was lost. So for those that don't know what DID is, DID is abbreviation of dissociative identity disorder, which is a disorder that develops due to trauma. And this is just where we fragment into different parts. And so we need to bring healing to those parts of us and then bring integration in those areas. And a lot of it is doing work like that, creative work, doing journaling, actually being able to sit with ourselves as well and work with what is going on in our inner world and inside of us. So that's really awesome. I know for me, about 2 or 3 years ago, I also released, was it about 2 years ago, 2 books for children and adults. Actually, it's sort of like an in-between book, just to help them understand how we came from God, our spirit comes from God, and then we sort of find our path on the earth, we find what our assignment is, but we go through all these hardships until we get there. And I remember writing those books in a time where I was going through a really hard time. And I felt like every day was a push and a struggle. And it's like one day I just woke up with this excitement that I want to write this little book. And it started with a little girl book, the little girl who remembered what she'd forgotten. Yeah. And I remember the feeling of joy I had writing that book, like I tapped into something I'd lost, like a joyfulness that was there. And then later on, I managed to finish the little boy book. But it wasn't as exciting for me or the same experience as the little girl book. It was just like God just ignited something in me. And that brought a lot of a shift for me in how I was feeling inside. So I can believe that you writing these books must have been such a therapeutic experience for you.
Absolutely. And the other thing is I illustrated my own books because they have pictures on every page.
I wondered if who did your illustrations, because you said you self-published. I had to pay for mine to be done because that's not my strong point. So that's really incredible.
It is actually not my strong point. I just decided to do it myself. I also looked at somebody else to do it for me. And then I just had that inkling in saying, but why not yourself? And I felt God challenging me and say, you can do more than just write the books. You can actually illustrate these books.
That's so awesome.
And I started drawing the pictures, but a lot of my books, you can see there's no faces. I wanted the back because each one have a different feeling of how the child feels about the condition. So not to expose them and with their faces, but actually just let the child decide themselves how the picture feels.
That's awesome.
So if you're sad, you perceive the picture as being a sad little kid. If you're happy, you perceive the picture to be happy. So not to force children to feel a certain way about the disease condition. Yeah.
So maybe we'll use this opportunity to just share the little books so that we can just show our audience. Maybe you can, just run through. So I think this is really cool. So these are Helena's little books that she did, and I think they're so awesome. Is there anything you'd like to say about each of these little books?
Yeah, I can. The epilepsy one is a book about Sarah and Jack, who were diagnosed with epilepsy, and this is their journey in acceptance by their friends about the epilepsy. The book is designed for everyone who have epilepsy or knows somebody with epilepsy, to just understand what it is. So this is a book with a boy and a girl. So I wanted to include both genders in this book. The diabetes book at the bottom here, it's the only little girl that I have a face for because I feel diabetes is so common around children, and especially African children. So I decided to make this book about a little African girl who have diabetes and how her friends is also accepting her and understanding why she's tired and why she's not feeling well.
So why is it more prevalent? Is it more prevalent with African children?
I think it's just not spoke about as much. The stigma with African children living with diabetes is not that common. You don't really see that, although they do have it. So that is one specifically to break a lot of stigma with diabetes in children.
Yes. Okay.
And then I had what's the other one? Oh, hearing loss. A little kid called Max, and Max just couldn't hear his friends properly, and he couldn't hear in class properly. And how just getting a hearing aid could make him again part of the friendship group and part of the class, where he was just feeling excluded by his hearing loss. So that was little Max.
That's beautiful.
Then I got energetic Alex, which is the ADHD, which is a story about the adventures. He's obviously, because of ADHD, he's a little bit busier than other kids, and the different ways he was managing the DID in class. So different things the teacher helped little Alex in the classroom to help him concentrate more and just be more involved in the class, where he was not so excluded or said, be quiet, sit down. It was all about helping him progress better in class. And then the end of the book is where Alex is a grown-up, and how successful he is as a grown-up, living through with ADHD, through this process of people around him helping him as well.
Yeah, and ADHD is very huge in society, children and adults. And I think we're only realizing now that it is also a trauma response, right?
Absolutely.
And so I feel like we need to educate ourselves around these topics so that we can best help these children, you know, in and out of the classroom, because I think in the classroom is where a lot of the struggle is, as well, with children, like with ADHD.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then the adoption one was written for my daughter, but it's a boy called James. And James is just through the eyes of his viewpoint of his parents, where the first time noticed that he's not the same color as his parents. And how the mom and dad explained to him, you were born in our hearts, you weren't born in our stomachs, but we love you just the same. And just his parents, he felt more loved because of that. So he didn't feel excluded. He was actually just feeling more loved in himself. Yeah, with the family. Yeah.
And how did your daughter feel about the book? Sorry, I know I'm interrupting, but I'm curious. How did your daughter feel about the book?
She absolutely loved it. That's the exact same story we told her when she realized she was adopted as well, where we explained to her, but she's older than my boys, so she was the firstborn. That made it very special for her, knowing that we wanted her. The boys was just given to us, and we couldn't choose, but we chose her, and that she was born in our hearts first, and then the boys was just given. So she feels more special as an older sister.
Yeah, that's really beautiful.
The other thing I didn't mention is I also have dyslexia. So as an adult with dyslexia, writing these books, I always said to myself, I won't be able to do that. A person with dyslexia cannot write. And it's actually proved myself wrong. So this book was created for myself as well.
That's amazing. That's right. And dyslexia is also very often a trauma response, right?
Absolutely, yes.
So you actually just proved that we mustn't use our disabilities, if you can call that a disability, as an excuse to not be able to do things, because I think God's placed inside each and every one of us the ability to be able to, outside of our challenges, be able to do amazing things like this, like write little books and be creative and help other people. And there's just so many things we can actually do.
Yes, that's absolutely true. And it's usually those people who say, I can't because, is where God challenges you and say, no, I can show you, you can.
You can because I can. That's what you're saying. Hey, yeah.
Absolutely. I didn't do any of this in my own strength, but in his strength.
I mean, And then your last little book about DID.
Oh, yes.
That is
That was a story.
Mm.
That is a story that I actually wrote for myself and my journey and trying to understand, because it is an interesting concept to try and understand yourself as an adult. But then also the book was written for myself and saying, is there other adults that need to read a children's book about DID? Because I simplified this so much that anybody can understand it. And because it was a foreign concept for myself, to get to know myself and understand what's going on in the inner world. Little River was my inspiration to just write the book. So children can read it, but also adults can read it and understand very easily what the idea is and how it affects people.
Yeah, I think that's great, because it is quite a complex topic and it can get very complicated, but actually, you know, if we can find an easy way to explain it to people, that in itself also removes the stigma, because, you know, when you get given a diagnosis or a label gets put on you, you know, immediately sometimes you feel you're out, you know, I don't fit in anymore, I've got this label. But the thing is, we only feel sort of out of our league to the point that we don't have the information we need. But as soon as we have the information we need, we don't need to feel that way anymore, because now we're informed, and then we can make the right choices for our own journey around that, and then help other people to do that, you know. So I love these books, because I think it takes the scariness out of these disorders, if you want to call them that, and it makes it friendly. I haven't read your books yet, but I'm sure that is what it's doing, is it's just making it not scary anymore, and especially for kids, and then for adults as well, because, you know, I mean, I'm sure the adults will read these books and also be touched by it, because that's the intention. So yeah, I just think that's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, let me just... So I know your books are available right now. You self-publish, so they're available from you, but you also have recently put them onto Amazon as a Kindle form. Am I right?
I did, yes.
Okay. So we will add those links at the end of the video, and when I post this on the social media platforms, I will put those links there so that they can also get the books. And then I just want to let our audience know that Helena has also recently joined as a Lions Arise ministry partner. So you can also find her details on our ministry partners page if you want to contact her directly for the little books. Or I'm sure maybe somebody would want you to come and talk about these topics, which I also think is awesome. Maybe that would be the next step. So in using these books, what was your thinking around how do parents use these books? How do children use these books? I know we talked a little bit about it in the beginning, but I think that's also good to just think about, like, how do we use these books to the best? Yeah.
Instead of my idea with the books was, instead of just buying one book for your one child, this is a books that I designed to be shared amongst children. So my idea is school children that's sitting in a classroom with one kid with diabetes, to share the book among everybody. So it's almost like a little classroom book where the teacher reads every now and then the book about diabetes or epilepsy or ADHD, for everybody else to understand how the one friend feels and how the one friend lives among other kids with not the same disabilities, how we can all be the same person, like in a classroom. We are all the same. It doesn't matter if you have a diabetes or epilepsy, we are all the same. And so the books was basically designed for more than just a child with a disability or disease. Yeah,
I'm thinking when I used to teach, I taught preschoolers early years, and we would have story time, right? And then they'd all come and sit around and they would pick a story and we'd read it. So I can almost picture that happening in a classroom situation where you know, maybe teachers have gotten hold of these books and they can sit and read this to the children and hear what the children are saying, you know, have to say. Because, you know, I think I was listening to a lady yesterday, or we were just chatting about the work that she does, and how she also inspires. She works with narrative therapy. So she also inspires the journaling and the creative side of it, right? But she shared a testimony with me where when she was working with children, also in the underprivileged communities, how she would take notes of the children that were sort of, let me say, the naughty ones. Although we know children were never really naughty. That's, you know, it's just the product of their environment. And that would constantly be giving problems in the classroom, for example, and how she brought those kids together after working with them, but then brought them together as a little group, and they could name themselves like a little gang, for example. And then they were like the team that she would deliberate with when there was a problem with somebody in the classroom. So somebody that was struggling, somebody that needed help, maybe somebody that was suffering from abuse, you know, at home, and then you could see that at school. And then she'd have a meeting with them, and they would then decide how they're going to make this child feel special. And I just thought that was so beautiful, because kids have that inside of them, right? We have to harness what's inside of them that is good, because if we focus constantly on what is wrong with a child, you know, even from a behavior point of view, never mind the label, they're going to feel there's something wrong with me. But we can actually empower them, you know, by knowledge. We can empower them by giving them these little tasks to do, and also by helping them understand, you know, what are their friends going through and how can they help their friends. So I just thought that was so cool. And I think these books can almost be, you know, the same kind of a concept. It's just empowering children, helping adults to empower the children with the knowledge as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's beautifully said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just loved that when I read that, and I said to her, I hope she's going to be writing a book too soon with all her little stories, because I think, you know, for me, we all have a story, right?
Yeah.
Our story, but then what God births out of our story. Because I feel, you know, a lot of people go through counseling and they've been through trauma, they've been through a lot of stuff. And then their whole journey becomes, I need to get better, I need to get better, I need to get better. But in that process, we don't realize what God's actually put inside of us for healing, like writing books, like coming up with something creative to help other people, or even in your struggle, you're helping other people. Because we become very self-focused and self-preserving. We want to self-preserve.
Yeah.
Instead of going, okay, Lord, what do you want to do with me in this process? And I think what you've done is absolutely incredible, that even with, you know, struggling with dyslexia, and I mean, even that you illustrated your own books, I just think that's really awesome. You know, that's a testimony that God can bring something so beautiful out of our pain and out of our suffering.
I feel like dyslexia is a gift rather than a limit that is put in our lives. If you have dyslexia, you sometimes tell yourself, I cannot write a book, I cannot do this, I cannot do that. Because the struggle to read, the struggle to put words to paper is such a daunting feeling. But when something is God inspired, it is always easier. And what I felt with the books with my dyslexia is, as I wrote it down, I felt it didn't come from myself. So the dyslexia was never a problem for me writing these books. I also had a good team around me, my husband and other people that I gave the books to and said, please read and check for me. So my support group during my writing of these books was enormous. I didn't do it alone. I had people around me that could just feed me and say, well done, you're doing great, keep going, keep going. And so I never gave up on myself because people believed in me, that was surrounding me. And I felt that was all God inspired.
And Helena, think about this, is your spirit doesn't have dyslexia.
Yes.
And
Yes,
that's where the books come from. They come from your spirit because God put it there. So it's
absolutely.
also another sign that, we need to, sometimes we're so body and soul focused that we miss the spirit part of our being, because our spirit is actually who we are, right? That's where God's kind of put the blueprint in. And sometimes we need to do a bit of work on our spirit to get us healed, because we know our spirits can be broken, there can be defilement, but Holy Spirit dwells there, so
Yes.
there's no sickness or disease where the Lord is. So I think, that's something we all need to remember when we want to limit ourselves. And, like we shared, is that we put that label on, and then we want to label, I'm this, and then I can't do this and I can't do that. And I know I've had an experience with a client that also had dyslexia, trauma response through her childhood, and said, I can't do this, I can't do that. And she's got such a love for teaching, education, and children that God opened a door for her to teach. And although it's not been easy, but He opened that door to show her that you can do what you think you can't do. And, that's just really incredible.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true. And while you write these books, it comes from within. It wasn't a head process at all. It was a heart process. And I wrote out of my heart. And that's where I felt that was all God inspired.
Yeah. So then it's spirit, eh? It's not soul, it's spirit.
It's spirit, yeah.
And you mentioned to me about your little boy.
Yes, so my boy is 12 years old now. He started playing piano when he was 5, and he is also dyslexic, but his dyslexia is so bad that he's struggling to read and write, obviously, but he also doesn't read notes. He picks up the patterns of the notes. Wow. And he plays in concerts, and he plays in front of people. He plays, we have a mall here, and there's a big white piano in the middle of the mall.
Yes, I've seen that.
You've seen it. And every time we go there, he will sit and play, and people will crowd around him and just watch him and applaud this little boy for playing piano so beautifully. And he's carrying this. He knows he has dyslexia, but he knows that it's converted as a gift. He doesn't see it as a problem. He knows, I have dyslexia, therefore I can play piano so well.
That's incredible.
And that's just raising him up as, it's not a problem that you have, it's a gift that you have. Dyslexia is a gift.
And maybe that's a lesson for parents, hey, is that we need to not focus so much on that thing again, like we spoke, but have a look at those awesome things that God has put inside our kids. Because, intelligence and creativity, they've, I want to almost say they have different IQs, because not all intelligences are the same. Not all creativity is the same. So you might define intelligence as being able to read or write, but what about the little composer and the musician that's so incredible that you might be able to read and write, but maybe you can't play a musical instrument? So it's like that fluid intelligence that we have in different areas, that we have strengths. And we can learn. That the amazing thing about the human brain is that we can learn. We have that neuroplasticity. So nothing needs to actually hold us back, because again, if we have God's Spirit within us, we can do all things through Him, right? And nothing's impossible with Him.
Yes, and a disease or a condition is not an excuse; it's an opportunity.
Yes.
So use that. Yes, you got epilepsy. Yes, you got diabetes, but use it as an opportunity for others to learn, or for yourself to push yourself through that, and not to hold yourself back personally because of something that you have that you feel disqualifies you as a person. It doesn't disqualify you. Being dyslexic doesn't disqualify you, but it actually qualifies you even more, because when you overcome that thing that's supposed to keep you back, you laugh in Satan's face and say, you tried to hold me back, but it didn't work.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's like that we are more than overcomers, right, in Christ. So yes,
Absolutely.
that's right. So if you overcome that thing and you do exactly what the enemy doesn't want you to do, that's your victory over him.
Yes.
That's us trampling on serpents and scorpions. You know, that's us standing strong in our faith. And the Bible says, having done all, you know, stand. Just stand in the faith and stand in what God's put in your heart to do, and know that you can achieve that with him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. So, Helena, is there anything else you'd like to share before we close off? Is there anything on your heart that you'd maybe like to share with others to encourage them and to inspire them?
Basically, I feel like there's so much out there that we haven't seen yet from people who is going through stuff. When was the last time you asked God, what can I do, instead of just like you're saying, just for yourself, and look inward? Just ask God, is there something that needs to be birthed again, even if it was 20 years ago? Is there something new that needs to come out of yourself instead of just looking in? And I feel that is something that there is so much out there we haven't seen yet. And even if you have to illustrate your own book, if you have to self-publish, it's okay. It doesn't mean you are less than somebody who has a contract with a big company. It doesn't matter. The little books makes a difference.
That's right. Yeah, it's about what God's put in your heart to do, right? And if you're just faithful to do that, He's got his stamp on it. It's part of, so I look at it like this: when God puts a concept in our spirit, right? So yours was 20 years ago. That's part of your blueprint. That's your DNA. That's what he planned for you. So it just shows that no matter what obstacles come in the way, no matter what the enemy tries to put in our way, or just life throws in our way, what God has said, it's going to come to pass. We just need to hang on to that thing. You know, just think if Abraham had to wait, how long did he have to wait? You know, and then we try and birth Ishmaels in the process, but we just need to wait on God for his perfect timing for things. So, and I think now is the perfect time for this.
Yes.
So yeah, that's
in my darkest hour, the books came out.
There we go.
So, and it's what you're saying is wait for God to let this manifest in our life.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, Helena, I want to just thank you for sharing with us today, and we'll see how far we can get your books out so that people can buy them. And I think they're really valuable for teachers as well, those that work with kids. So, yeah, let's hope they go far and wide and that they touch people's lives. And thank you for just being brave to share your story, because I know it's not always easy to share our stories. It's a bit daunting, but you've done so well today. I really enjoyed this. And yeah, I hope to see more of you in the future. Maybe we can have some more specific talks around those topics as well, because, I mean, you have the experience as a nurse. And yeah, it's also just you're a nurse, and so you've got that firsthand experience of that. But to think that, you know, so you start out as a nurse and this is what I'm going to do, for example, and you move into your life, but then it's like God changes things and now you're an author, you know, it's, you know, and you've got these children's books. So, but he plans your path like that, right? It's like you need to have that experience to be able to do this. And then you need to go through this to be able to do that. And so that's, yeah, so he just prepares our way. It's like he orders our steps and we just need to go with the flow, you know?
Like you're saying, if I was a nurse just for these books that I'm writing now, it's his plan, and that's okay. So I don't feel that I'm losing something because I'm not practicing as a nurse right now, that I'm actually gaining something else.
That's right.
So God has allowed me to be a nurse in order to write these books, and that is fine. That is okay.
And then we need to be able to be flexible and actually open our minds up, that we don't put ourselves in a box, so that God can actually just do with our lives what he wants to do. Thank you so much, Helena, for your time today. Like I say, I pray that your books will go far and wide, and we'll do our best to get it out there. And so I just bless your further books that you're going to be writing. I look forward to those. And yeah, so just thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Ladies, until next time, be blessed.